Some behaviors may seem harmless at first, but over time, they can turn a relationship into an emotional prison. And the worst part? Many women only realize it when they're already deeply involved. Today, I'm going to show you 7 warning signs you should never ignore in a man, and number 6 is one of the most dangerous. 1. He doesn't respect your boundaries. You know that guy who just seems to ignore it when you say no? You try to change the subject, and he insists. You ask for some time alone, and he shows up out of nowhere. At first, it might seem like he just wants to be around you, but in reality, this shows a lack of respect. And if he doesn't respect small boundaries now, he could cross much bigger ones in the future. Healthy relationships require space and respect. You have the right to decide what makes you feel comfortable, and if someone can't accept that, it's a major red flag. Imagine a partner who insists on checking your phone even after you've said you don't like that, or someone who makes plans without even asking if you're available. These small actions show that he doesn't take your feelings into account. No matter how much you like him, never allow anyone to invade your space. If you give in once, he may think he can do it whenever he wants. And the worst part? This kind of behavior usually escalates over time. Today, he ignores a simple request. Tomorrow, he may disrespect something far more serious. Is that really the kind of relationship you want in your life? The problem is that these signs often go unnoticed in the beginning. And there's one behavior that may seem affectionate at first, but over time becomes suffocating. Many people mistake it for love or concern, but in reality, it's a dangerous warning sign. 2. Control and jealousy. Disguised as care at first, he says he just wants to take care of you. He asks where you are, who you're with, when you'll be back. It seems sweet, until you realize you have to justify your every move. A friend compliments you, and suddenly it turns into an argument. The clothes you've always worn are now inappropriate for a serious relationship. And if you try to reason with him, he says, "I do this because I love you too much." But you know what? Relationships built on control aren't love. They're possession. A little jealousy can be normal, but when he uses it to limit your freedom, that's a problem. If he's suspicious of everything and tries to pull you away from your friends and family, that's not protection. It's isolation. Over time, his insecurity becomes your cage. You don't need permission to live your life. Real love respects your individuality and makes you feel free, not watched. If he freaks out because you took too long to reply to a message or demands to know every detail of your day, that's not care, it's control. And without trust, a relationship becomes an endless cycle of accusations and emotional exhaustion. Now tell me, have you ever experienced something like this? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments, because your experience might help other women recognize these signs. And speaking of signs, there's one that's even more subtle and destructive, one that makes you doubt your own memory and emotions. 3. Emotional manipulation and gaslighting. You're absolutely sure he said something, but when you bring it up, he denies it. He tells you that you misunderstood, that you're overreacting, that you've been too sensitive. Little by little, you start doubting yourself. Did I really hear that? Am I just imagining things? This psychological game, known as gaslighting, makes you lose trust in your own perception of reality. A manipulator twists the facts to make you feel confused and guilty. If you say he's being cold, he accuses you of always picking fights. If you call out something wrong he did, he flips the situation until you're the one apologizing. In the end, his goal is simple: to weaken you emotionally so he can have control over you. This kind of abuse doesn't leave visible scars, but it destroys your self-esteem and mental health. You start believing everything is your fault and do whatever it takes to avoid conflict, but the more you give in, the more he manipulates. Until one day, you realize you don't even know what's real anymore or what's been distorted by him. And when someone makes you question your own feelings, it becomes even harder to recognize another equally toxic behavior. He may not attack you with words, but the way he reacts or completely ignores your emotions says everything. Lack of empathy and contempt, you're sharing something important, hoping for support, but he barely listens. He responds with indifference, changes the subject, or even mocks your feelings. At first, you try to justify it. Maybe he just doesn't know how to express emotions. Maybe he's distracted. But over time, you realize it's not distraction, it's a lack of interest. Someone who truly cares listens, supports, and values what you feel. A man without empathy doesn't care about how his actions affect you. If you're upset, he calls you dramatic. If something bothers him, he demands understanding. But when it's your turn, your emotions don't matter. This slowly destroys the relationship because only his feelings are important. And without realizing it, you start suppressing your pain just to avoid being ridiculed. Over time, this lack of empathy turns into contempt. An impatient look when you speak, a sarcastic laugh when you express an opinion, a comment that belittles your achievements. Little by little, he stops seeing you as an equal and starts treating you as someone inferior. And this completely shatters your self-confidence. Loving someone should never mean accepting being disrespected. And if contempt already hurts, imagine a behavior that makes you feel afraid. It may not happen all the time, but when it does, it can turn a simple disagreement into something much worse. Aggressiveness and explosive anger. Everything seems fine until, out of nowhere, he explodes. He yells, slams doors, grabs your arm tightly, or breaks something near you. Then comes the excuse. It was just a moment of stress. Maybe he even apologizes. But deep down, you know that wasn't normal. Uncontrolled anger doesn't just appear out of nowhere, and if he doesn't know how to handle his emotions, guess who ends up suffering? You. The problem isn't disagreeing or getting upset. That happens in every relationship. The real issue is how he reacts. If every argument makes you walk on eggshells to avoid setting him off, something is seriously wrong. No one should live in fear of triggering their own partner. A mature man knows how to communicate without yelling, intimidating, or scaring you. And the worst part is that this aggressiveness can escalate over time. At first, it might just be a harsher tone of voice. Then, a punch to the wall, a stronger grip on your arm, that cold stare that makes you feel small. These are warning signs you cannot ignore. If he can't control his anger now, what's stopping him from going even further in the future? And do you know what's even more dangerous? He will always try to justify this behavior. He'll blame work, stress, life, and more often than not, even you. But there's another warning sign. Much more subtle that can even seem like affection at first. 6. Social isolation. At first, he says he misses you and wants to spend more time just the two of you. Sounds romantic, right? But little by little, he starts complaining when you go out with friends. He speaks badly about your family, makes negative comments about the people close to you, and before you even notice, your social circle starts shrinking. Suddenly, the friendships that were once a big part of your life begin to fade away. And who's left? Just him. Isolation doesn't happen all at once. First, he says your friend doesn't like him. Then, he makes you feel guilty for wanting to go out. He claims certain people are a bad influence, or that no one understands your relationship. Before long, you start turning down invitations just to avoid arguments. The result? You become more and more dependent on him, emotionally, and sometimes even financially. Healthy relationships mean freedom. You can love someone and still have your own life. But a controlling man fears any outside influence. He knows that if you're surrounded by friends and family, it will be harder for him to manipulate you. That's why, little by little, he pushes away the people who might warn you. And before you realize it, you're alone, without a support system, and unsure where to turn for help. And when you're isolated, you become even more vulnerable to another kind of destructive behavior. It's not yelling or outright prohibitions, but something subtle. Something that slowly erodes the foundation of any relationship. Now listen to this quick message. Did you know there's a secret that only 1 in 1,000 women know? It's something that makes any man commit to you completely without even understanding why. This information is so rare that very few people have access to it. If you're ready to discover something that could change the way you approach relationships forever, I've left an exclusive video in the comments, but watch it quickly. It may not be available for long. Dishonesty and broken trust. One little lie here, another one there. At first, they seem harmless. He hides where he was, makes up excuses for coming home late, leaves out details about conversations with other women. But trust doesn't shatter all at once. It erodes little by little, and before you know it, you're constantly wondering, is he telling the truth? Relationships require transparency. If you feel like you have to investigate what he says, that's already a problem. Trust should come naturally, not be something you have to force out of him. And the worst part? When confronted, he might try to flip the situation, calling you paranoid or controlling. But no one starts doubting for no reason. Lies destroy emotional security. You begin to question everything: his promises, his stories, even the happy moments. When the foundation of a relationship is weak, any storm can bring it down. And more often than not, someone who lies once will lie again. A man who doesn't value honesty is unlikely to change that behavior. Now that you know these 7 unacceptable behaviors, tell me, how many of them have you seen or experienced? If you recognize any of these signs in your relationship, it might be time to rethink things, because a healthy relationship should bring you peace, not doubt, fear, or insecurity. And if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos. Oh, and there's already another video playing on the screen right now. Click on it and come join me.